Competition podcast may contain adult themes, sexual discussions, and strong language. We want everyone to be educated, but we are intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. On today's episode, we're talking to Jaqueline Michelle, Sensual Shibari Practitioner. You guys want to hear a joke?
I always want to hear a joke. The answer's never no.
Did you hear about this year's bondage competition?
No, tell me.
Yeah, it ended in a tie.
Very clever. I love it.
And now, with love from Huntington Beach, your host, Ashley Weller.
Welcome, fellow humans, to a full frontal episode. You know what that means, longtime listener. Prepare yourself for 5 hours. I'm just kidding. A full frontal episode with Jaqueline Michelle. Today, we are talking to someone that husband Kevin Weller found on Instagram, like he does, mastermind of media, and sends me this person and says, you have got to check this page out, babe. This person is incredible, and what they do is stunning, and I know that you're going to love it. We had a BDSM expert with Sir Rucifer on before, one of the best episodes we've had, and the Shabari portion of his episode was life-changing for me. And my husband knows I love Shibari, and I love posting about it, and I think it's art, and I think it's beautiful. And I saw this page, y'all, and I got wet immediately. Every fucking time I wait, like when she posts something new, I'm like, oh God, who's tied up, and how are the ropes? And she does videos and music, and you can hear the people in the videos saying things like, I feel beautiful, or moaning in ecstasy, and fuck all if I don't want to be tied the fuck up by this amazing human. Yeah. Jaqueline Michelle is a sexuality mentor, a sensual Shibari practitioner based in Miami, Florida. She specializes in supporting women in connecting their bodies, revolutionizing their sexuality and sensuality, and healing from sexual trauma, something we're going to get into deep in this episode. She wants to empower women in a safe way. Her background is in yogic and tantric philosophy, an entirely other episode, by the way, and solo conscious kink. So we are going to cover how to do solo Shibari in this episode. Ooh. Stay tuned after the break. I'm very excited. She is devoted to guiding us to our power and radically accepting every part of ourselves and interweaving the flesh with the sacred. Help me welcome Jaqueline Michelle.
I want to have you introduce me every time I walk into the room. Like, that was so
right? I am a hype woman for sure.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dive into this conversation with y'all.
Thank you so much. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you're from, kind of guide us with the important pieces. Do you have siblings? Do you have a boyfriend? Like where'd you go to school? What do you think is important for us to know about Jaqueline, and how did it bring you to where you're at today?
Yeah, that is such a super intense story. So I'm 27 years old, Costa Rican by blood, Texan by nature. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas.
Shout out. Love Costa Rica so much. My husband and I went there, and it is stunning country and kind humans and amazing nature. Love Costa Rica. Fantastic. Yeah, and then right there, Texan.
Yeah, Texan girl. I didn't realize how proud I was to be Texan until I left Florida. I moved to Florida about 1.5 years ago, and I went to Miami. And I'm like, I love Miami. Best city I've ever lived in. And I'm like, I'm fucking Texan. Like, I'm a Texas girl.
Don't forget where this girl came from. I think they have a saying, and I think it says, you can take the girl out of Texas, but you can't take the Texas out of the girl, right?
For sure. Yeah.
That's where that phrase originates. So, but Miami, that's got to be an amazingly beautiful party town. Do you love it there?
I love it. The weather, I don't do anything below 80 degrees. So that's just really beautiful in and of itself. I'm a tropical baby. So like my partner and I have a beautiful garden. We literally get like mangoes during mango season. I kid you not, we get 30 to 40 mangoes a day. It is very stressful, but it is like, we have mangoes in our freezer from the past 2 summers. Like we're still like giving them out, trying to have mango smoothies as often as possible. We have 2 cats that showed up like a week before I moved in. So it was just divine timing. timing. I've been with my partner for about 2 years. We're in a non-monogamous relationship together. He also does tantric massage, and he's a sexual freedom coach. So our lives are very interwoven, and this is how we ended up meeting each other. So we're peers in the field before we actually fell in love, and we have an amazing love story, but that's a whole other podcast. And then I was raised by I want you to
come back and talk about your love story. Jesus, man.
And then I was raised by a single mother. She had me at 18, so it's been an honor to just like watch her grow into the woman that she is today. I feel like kids that were born from young parents like have that privilege of watching their parents transition from basically a child to a grown adult. And then I have a little sister. Her and I are 7 years apart. She is my favorite human being in the entire universe. And then I have a beautiful stepdad who is like the divine masculine in my life.
Oh my God. That's incredible. What a beautiful way to introduce your family. And also completely understand the sibling thing. I have a crap load, and they are also I can't say they're my favorite human, but like they're in my orb of favorite human beings because they're your siblings. Like you love them. They're your fucking homies. They know deep shit, and they know who you are on every level, and they've seen you at every aspect of your life. Like they have seen more shit than any other person in your life,
and probably caused just as much of that shit too. It's like
is part of the problem, right? Shout out to siblings, because I just unofficial sponsor siblings.
Siblings. That's like the unofficial sponsor of this season.
Right.
Siblings. I feel like it's a good one. All right. So then you started working in this field, which is a very niche, very, I'm sure, close community sort of a field. How did you, this is not something that you just accidentally stumbled into a garden party and people were practicing Shibari. So how'd that happen?
So it's a really long story. So I come from a lineage of, and it's going to get deep and a little like trigger warning. I'll just throw that one into the mix.
Trigger warning at this point in the show.
Yeah. So I come from a family that has a lot of sexual abuse, domestic violence, and incest. And so that was the environment that I was reared in. And so from a very young age, my relationship with the males in my family was just very sexual. That was the way that I received safety. That was the way that I received love. That was the way in which I was validated. And so naturally, when you are experiencing these types of things with the people in your life that are supposed to protect you, that really distorts the relationship you have with your sexuality, with your femininity, and with your worth in general. And, I was raised by, a very single mother. She did everything in her power to protect me. Like she's a fucking badass woman. And with that as well, like nobody in our family had the tools or the awareness or, helping the education to do anything. Yeah. And so whenever puberty hit and all of my, actual sexual hormones start kicking into my body, it was just an influx of emotions that I could not handle. And I put myself in a lot of like really dangerous situations. There was a lot of, statutory situations that I put myself into. I got into drug abuse at a really young age. And then I was a self-harmer for about 13 years of my life. And so going through middle school, high school with all of those things, I went into naturally a really deep depression. And I went into college. I was always really fascinated with psychology. I used to want to be a criminal psychologist, and I wanted to work in state prisons because I just wanted to understand why. Like I wanted to get to the root of just trauma and pain so that I can at least have some form of closure. And
why do people cause pain? What kind of people cause pain? What's the root of their pain? Why are they choosing to hurt other people? Yeah, that makes absolute fucking sense.
And I was very depressed, but I didn't know anything otherwise. I was like, life is just going to be dull and that's it. And I was very hypersexual, very unconsciously promiscuous. And then I was in college and a very serendipitous week happened. And my dance professor came up to me and she was like, hey, I teach yoga. If you want extra credit on your next test, come to a yoga class. And I was a big weightlifter at the time. So I was like, okay, fuck it. Like extra points on a test for a yoga class. Like I'll come through. So
for bench.
Easy point.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. I was like, all right. And so I went and I rolled out my mat And I've never done yoga before. And I took that first, Tadasana, where you're standing at the front of the mat and you reach your hands up and you inhale and then you exhale. And it was like an immediate realization that, oh my God, this is my body. And I have been running from my body. And nobody, I started therapy at 6 years old to heal from sexual trauma. It just continued. And nobody had introduced me to my body in a safe, loving, present way. And so when I tell you I became addicted to yoga, like I was almost like borderline annoying, like, oh, you need to do yoga, you need to meditate, blah, 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 like kind of on my high horse about it. But
you want to know how Jacqueline does yoga? You want to know how Jacqueline does yoga? How? Don't worry, she'll tell you. Is that what it was? Basically. Don't worry, she'll tell you that she did, like a vegetarian. Like,
well, the mind-body connection. The mind-body connection is really powerful.
110. And again, it was revolutionary, but then there was also, I feel like every spiritual baby goes through that like hippie pants type thing,
Absolutely.
And then
yoga is the gateway drug to that, because I too was addicted to yoga until it actually broke my body. It snapped my meniscus, which sucked. But I still love the feeling of, and I just did a hot yoga with my sister like 6 months ago and forgot how good it felt to be in control of every aspect of from my breathing to my sweating to my movement and I forgot, and you just reminded me, I got head to toe goosebumps when you described it. So that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful practice. And in that same week, I was taking a psychology class, and we started learning about positive psychology, which is the study of happiness, how to maintain happiness, and the different levels of happiness. And in that same week, I was like, I had no idea that humans could be happy. Like, it was literally such a foreign thought to me. And I learned happiness and yoga at the same week. And I was like, okay, I know I'm still going to do, in my mind, I still wanted to be a psychologist, but I was like, I'm shifting everything. I wanted to get into transpersonal psychology. I wanted to like fuse, because I felt like there was something there. Oh, here's my little kitty. I felt like there's something there. And so that was that. And so I went, deeper into my practice, and it was really interesting because, like I said, it was very hypersexual as a trauma response. And it was interesting because yoga helped me get into my body and feel my body. But I think because I shifted that level of presence from disassociation to presence, that created a certain sense of safety within my nervous system to where my trauma actually came up. And that's when I started to realize, oh my God, these are all the things that I've been running from. And I felt like I went from an Olympic sprinter to somebody that was paralyzed. I went from somebody whose entire life was sexual abuse, sexual everything. I led with my sexuality. And then I was in a relationship of 5 years with a very beautiful partner. And all of a sudden I couldn't kiss him. I couldn't hold his hand. We couldn't have sex. I would go into a panic attack. And it was I was 19 years old. Again, I had no education. Nobody was talking about this when it came to sexual healing. And so I thought I was broken. And I was like, I'm never going to enjoy sex again. It almost got to the point, just to be extra vulnerable, it almost got to the point to where I started to hate yoga for connecting me to my body because it separated me from sex. You know what I mean? There was a resentment
towards the thing that quote unquote broke you.
Exactly. Or like was kind of, peeling all these masks off. And I don't remember how I found Tantra, but I did. And Tantra everybody has slightly different definitions or practices with it, but I really got into Neo Tantra or Red Tantra, which is more about sacred sexuality and really being in the flesh and playing with orgasmic energy and things at that level. And it was the first time again where I realized like, oh my yoni, my vagina is sacred. Yeah. Like I can meet God in my orgasm. I can have presence in the bedroom. I can circulate energy through my body. It doesn't need to be this, all the ways in which, not only survivors of assault can experience it, but just almost as a society, the way that we're taught or not taught about the depths of sexuality and connection and even exploring it in a casual way, but an empowering casual way, right? It doesn't always need to be like deep and
especially when we talk about with women's pleasure in particular, like that's not necessarily what society tells us is the reason that we have sex. The reason that a lot of society says we have sex is to have babies. And a woman doesn't need to orgasm to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a man does. So whose orgasm is more highly valued in that society? And when we take the pleasure away from sex and we turn the vagina, the vulva, into a tool that men use to spread their seed, there are victims of trauma who don't even realize that they have this trauma, that they've been spiritually traumatized by purity culture, by their religion, or sexually traumatized, as you have experienced. These are like deep ways that our culture has embedded into us. Our pleasure doesn't matter. Our bodies are not our own, and we do not have any control over our vaginas.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and it's really heartbreaking. And so whenever I learned about Tantra, I mean, it was revolutionary, and I got introduced to self pleasure in which is a very well known practice in Tantra, and a lot of people kind of think like, oh, self pleasure, okay, I'm going to masturbate, but in reality, self pleasure is about completely letting go of the agenda or the goal of orgasm. It's more about tapping into deep presence and allowing the energy and the emotions that are coming up and through you to actually be accepted, to actually be felt. And so whenever I was recovering from disassociation, like I said, intimacy set me into panic. I could not feel my body. I was anorgasmic, no libido, couldn't self-lubricate. It was literally like a 180. And
Wow.
I always, lovingly, I say this joke because now if you see at least how I, depict my self-pleasure practice online, like it is very beautiful, sensual, artistic. I really put time into making it ritualistic. Yeah. But the first 2 years, I mean, it was the ugliest thing anybody could have seen. It was just me like holding myself, snot coming down my eyes, like sobbing. But it was just like, I mean, it was heartbreaking, but also like it was revolutionary to just they just feel that shit that so many people suppress. And that it takes so much courage to just be like, you know what, like this shit needs to fucking come out. And I need to feel the heartache, and I need to be like, yo, that shit wasn't fucking cool. Like all the things. And so little by little, go for it.
I'm just going to say, like, for any listener, like that statement, right? You need to feel the shit. Like I had a patient, I work at an office with clinical patients, and they have mental health issues, and a woman had depression, and she came in and she started crying, and she said, I'm sorry. And I said, why are you sorry? And she was like, because I'm crying. And I was like, oh no, that's your emotions just need to get out. Like, here's a Kleenex, but like, you're fine. Let it out. Let the tears are the lube of life. So
I love it. I'm stealing that.
Feel it, take it. I don't give a shit. I come up with stupid little quips all the time.
I love it.
But seriously, you've got to let that shit out. And if you don't feel it, you're going to feel it in another way. You're going to feel it in migraines. You're going to feel it in depression. You're going to feel it in lashing out at your loved ones. You're going to feel it in back pain or nausea in the mornings. Like, you have to experience emotions in a healthy way, or else it's going to come out in an unhealthy. They're coming out one way or the other.
110. Yeah. And it's really, one of the things that I really love about sensuality, and we can go into this here in a little bit, is like, I really love to think about sensuality as not just like the beautiful oils and roses, but like, I feel like as spiritual beings, we came into this body to actually have the full spectrum of life. And the full spectrum of life literally means the anger, the rage, the sorrow, as well as the arousal and the excitement, and even the boredom. Like, I was having a conversation with a client of mine the other day, and she's getting into her self-pleasure practice. And she was like, is it normal to feel bored at certain parts? And I'm like, yeah. Usually when we meet boredom, what we usually do is we reach for our phone, or we go for a snack in the fridge, or we go, try to distract ourselves from that boredom. But you actually sitting with your boredom and connecting to your body, that means you're on new grounds, that you get to now have an opportunity to expand that level of awareness and presence within yourself. So it's like, to really just allow yourself to feel whatever it is on whatever side of the spectrum is honestly very liberating, to actually meet yourself in all those different components.
And not necessarily comforting for a lot of individuals to just sit with an emotion regardless of...
I hate it. I need to get better at that.
Sad trombone.
Wow.
Exactly. Okay, so you got into Tantra, and then you got into Shibari as a byproduct of Tantra?
So it was the pandemic, which was a really beautiful time for so many people.
Running theme here. What's your position?
I mean, if there's one good thing that came out of the pandemic is the passion, this right
podcast,
right passions that people have found because of the pandemic.
You would not believe
the boredom.
You would not believe how many guests I have where I said, "What brought you here?" And they're like, "Well,
during the pandemic."
Like, fuck. This podcast is a pandemic baby, and unlike other things that were pandemic babies of mine, this one is still alive and it is thriving. And then also I became a plant mom during the plantdemic, and I now own like 80 indoor plants. You can see.
No, literally.
Here.
There's like
I 80. You. Before
you said, and I was like, she has a garden. She's going to love me.
Mm-hmm.
Before I moved to Miami, I had, I think like maybe 40 or 50 houseplants. So I feel you on that. I had to sell them all because I couldn't bring them with me to the move.
When we moved 2 years ago, she had to give away at least 40 of her plants because we have a smaller backyard and areas to put outdoor plants. She was heartbroken.
I'm sure they're in good hands.
They are.
Absolutely.
My aunt took them and she loves succulents, so she's fine. Okay, so let's get back to you and Shibari. How did you get into that? Because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so before the pandemic, I was teaching yoga, waiting tables, and stripping. And I had always, at a certain point, I started to realize that.
Can you back it up?
Teaching yoga.
That up.
Yeah.
Nope. One more forward.
Stripping.
There you go.
Ding, ding, ding.
You were going to just say that and just keep moving?
There's there's so many different, I'm like, okay, if we're going to talk about Shabari, let's talk about Shabari, because I can definitely pop that into the mix for you.
I already know we're going to have you back because we've got we've got plenty of things into.
Have Aaron on too.
Oh, that's so true.
That would be fun. Anyway.
Okay. All right. You know what we're going to do here? And it's not something I normally do on What's Your Position because I'm a nosy fuck. I'm going to put a pin in that. Boop.
We can just turn this into like a 2-hour combo too. Like I'm in no rush.
Just put it in. We might have to do a 2-part episode here.
Yeah.
Ashley, do what you will. Okay. So, okay. All right. I don't know if I can undo this. How long had you been stripping for?
I stripped for maybe 2.5 years. And then whenever I was waiting tables, so Dallas is really big on restaurants, which is you.
What? Yes.
Wait, what?
Yes. You heard.
Did I hear what you just said?
You did. Both of you did. So think Hooters, right?
Okay.
Hooters, but lingerie. So you're actually like in bra and panties instead of little outfits.
We call them bikini bars.
We call them bikini bars.
Okay, cool. Same diff.
Yeah.
Bikini coffee shops too.
Exactly.
Bikini coffee shops, bikini bars.
Okay.
Yes, but you have to wear safe shoes. So you're super cute in your lingerie and your non-slip work shoes, right?
But I mean, Vans, like a G-string and some Vans, that's a look. That's a whole vibe.
I agree.
That's a vibe for sure.
Big fan.
So did you enjoy? I'm just going to ask a couple questions. Did you enjoy?
I loved it. It was a revolutionary experience for me. This is a fusion of two different things. I've always wanted to be a stripper ever since I was a little girl. I was just so fascinated with a naked woman captivating a room. My mom worked at a Lebanese bar and there was belly dancers there. And my mom wouldn't have a babysitter sometimes. So I would go to work with her and I would literally sit at the corner of the bar and everybody was really nice to me. It was a really cool place. And I remember just seeing they ended up giving me like a belly dancing costume. I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old. Like I've always been a very feminine, very sensual creature, like ever since I can remember. Yeah. And so, and I always
body and absolutely.
And so I remember whenever I first went to audition, I was 18 years old, got hired. It's not a difficult thing to do. And I remember I remember the manager looked at me. I just turned 18 and he goes, "You look like you're a really nice girl. Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I'm going to do this, that, and it was really, really nice." And then other things happened. I ended up never walking back in. But years and years and years passed. And I had, at this certain time, like I had already gotten into Tantra. I started to reclaim my body and my sexuality in a way that felt very authentic and stable. And I still had this really strong desire. I got deep into like my sensuality movement. I spent a ridiculous amount of time dancing in front of the mirror. And I was just like, I want an audience. I want to be praised. I want to be worshiped like in my own feminine body. And so I remember I'm a really big journaler. And for 3 months, I sat and kind of like went into what I perceived the shadow work was going to be before I ever stepped into the club, to make sure that my intention for going into it wasn't validation and like, I need somebody to love me in this way. And it was actually from like, no, this is something that I have a really, really deep calling to do. And some of the things that I remember thinking was like, okay, well, what are other people going to think about me if they know that I started stripping? Or what if I have to dance for a man that I'm not really attracted to? Things of that nature. And I really, I realized that, you know, I personally don't have any judgment towards sex workers. If anything, I'm like, oh, what a beautiful way to express your body and make money. And then when it came to dancing for people that I didn't think was attractive, I really wanted to come to it from like a more like tantric or sacred space of like, everybody's beautiful. Everybody deserves love. Everybody deserves affection. Everybody deserves attention. And I really felt this call to like bring everything that I was learning about Tantra into the sex club. And so whenever I started dancing, reality kicked in and I was like, oh, I can be tantric. That doesn't mean the club is going to be tantric. Right. And so I went through a lot. I mean, in the beginning, one thing that I had already mastered was my stage presence. So that was really easy to get customers through that. But I mean, if you don't have game, if you don't have sales skills, and if you don't have like confidence, you're going to get rejected. It doesn't matter how beautiful you are or what you look like or what you offer, you are going to get rejected as a dancer. And so I remember like my first, you know, X amount of months, like I was getting rejected a lot. And then I would go to the back and like feel really bad about myself. And I was like, wait, like, I don't even know these people. Why am I like getting so torn apart? Right. And then I went on the drinking path and I was like, okay. So I went on the drinking path and I got my confidence and I got my flirtatiousness and, you know, I was having a good time. And then I had a dream one night that I had tally marks all over my body. And I took that as a sign of like my subconscious being like, yo, you need to reel it back. Like you lost your intention of entering the club. And so I started to go, I sat with myself and I was like, okay, I got reconnected to my intention. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to show up 110 million% me. I showed up to the club, no makeup on, didn't do my hair. Like I'm a very like natural beauty type of cat. And I stayed completely sober and I completely shifted my approach with these men. And I started to look them in the eyes, like really deeply. And how are you? How was your day? Tell me about yourself. I would caress them. It really felt like I was able to open my heart. And even the feedback that I started getting from customers was like, wow, you're actually here with me. And whenever I would dance for them, it wasn't like this. I mean, sometimes it would be very erotic, very sexual, very sensual, but it wasn't like this twerking, booty popping thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If I had the booty, I would definitely do it. But it became more of like this deep sensual trance where I was breathing with them and I was slowly grinding on them. And I really felt like I got to explore so many, the shadowy aspects, you know, there were so many other things that I learned about myself and did whenever I was in there. And then also just the ways in which I got to like just claim my sexuality and tap into my sacred slut in a really, really empowering and intentional way.
Hell yeah.
I fucking love it. Till this day, I tell the sacred slut. Yeah. And I say this all the time. Like I miss the club every single day. I'm like, oh, I should just go back for a night. And I actually have a girlfriend of mine she's creating a conscious cabaret event. And I'm performing anybody in Miami. I'm going to be there February 10th. I'm doing like pole work and sensual Shibari if anybody wants to come and see.
Oh my God.
I love that.
That's incredible. That is,
I feel like that's kind of the reason. I mean, that could be a reason why people get into doing pole dancing, just like how Aaron does, you know, as a form of exercise and a hobby, and it's a very good way to become more conscious of your body and like find that mindfulness.
A lot of my students, I have them write a paper, Jacqueline, at the end of the semester called Outside Your Bubble, and they have to go and do something in the world of human sexuality. It could be as easy as having a conversation with your mom about sex, or changing the method that you use when you have a period. So instead of tampons, you use a Diva cup. I had a student last semester write about masturbating before he worked out, and he actually increased his weights over the course of 30 days because he masturbated before he worked out. He had graphs. He had
so much data. It was awesome.
Yeah. But such a masculine way to go about it. Like, let me show you my ejaculation graphs.
You're right.
He got 100%. I got to tell you. And I use his, and I asked him, can I use your paper in the future? And he's like, you sure fucking can. And I was like, okay, fantastic. But a lot of the girls go to pole dancing classes, and so much of the theme in that class, those papers, is empowerment and how people become empowered after they feel sensual and feel confident with their bodies and feel like they're around other people who also feel that way. It's a very community feeling. So I can completely understand why people would want to get in that headspace. That absolutely fucking makes sense to me. 1,000%.
Yeah, it was a beautiful ride. I really, really, really loved it.
I want to talk a little bit about Shibari, although I could literally talk to you about your entire life for like 90. You want to be on like the whole next season?
I was going to say, I'm like, you're getting another invite back here for sure. We got a lot of time.
Season 5 is just Ashley and Jacqueline show, and we just talk.
I love it. We'll do a takeover.
Fine. I'm good. I'm fine with that. Completely fine. So Shabari often, now I said it wrong. Can you say it, please?
Shibari.
Shibari. Now,
fancy.
Shibari. Mia's Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, like it's Shibari. It's like saying, Japan. Like
it's like saying sushi.
It's like saying sushi. Like
yeah. It's what it's
Shibari.
It's what we say. But she said it right because she's Japanese. Shibari is a form of Japanese rope bondage. It differs from Western rope bondage in a few ways. It uses non-stretchy natural fiber rope, either jute or hemp. What do you use?
Jute.
Okay. And it also uses the rope doubled over in the middle, a point called the bite. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
You are.
It works down towards the end and has a deep focus for the aesthetics of the ties, uses building blocks and is repeated patterns that fit together to create the ties. Once you learn these basic blocks and patterns for basic safety, you can also figure out how to repeat that tie elsewhere. So Shibari is from Japan, and it is an ancient art that stemmed from actually tying up samurai soldiers. And it is used in the BDSM and kink world. And we have talked about both of these worlds on this episode numerous motherfucking times. Go back and find an episode. There are numerous thousands of episodes on BDSM. And I wanted to sort of go over a little bit about just risk, the rack model. Risk. Do you use the rack? What model do you use for your safety protocols there?
You know what? I wouldn't say I necessarily use a model. I have intimate conversations with what may be coming up with them if they get triggered over something, or what their fight or flight response is, or how they know how to navigate through their own triggers. And then any body injury that I should be made aware of. I don't go too deep into like pain or structure when it comes to my sessions. They're more gentle. They're more like sensual, soft base. Yeah. So I don't think I have as much risk.
You're not hanging people.
I'm not suspending people. No. So what I like to practice is more, it's called Ichinawa, which is essentially, 9 times out of 10, I'm mainly using just one rope, and I don't really focus on structure. I'm very much so an intuitive tire. So if anybody's listening and they're familiar with the jargon of Shibari, I'll use like a single or a double column tie, forward and reverse tension. And that's like my foundation blocks. And then I just kind of listen and play with what's happening in the body. So I have no idea what ties I'm going to have you in, what constraints, what holds. If anything, I'm having you kind of whirl and move through your own body through something that I guide you through. And then I kind of come in with like my feminine dominance and kind of dance and interweave with your body and hold you in ways. And where, for example, like if I feel like from the conversation and from what's emoting throughout our session, if I see that you're kind of like peeling your heart, contracting your heart, and you're kind of like going into this internal heartache, like I can either tie you to where you can go deeper into that contraction and actually allow yourself to be there, or I can reverse it and tie your arms behind you so that now your chest is being open. We're somatically releasing everything that's in your heart. So I've kind of fused the elements of what I learned from Tantra and self-pleasure in with solo bondage, and then I create that in my session.
We might just have to go to Miami.
Literally just felt
When we found you, I was like, we need to figure out where she lives because we want to have her in the studio.
Yeah.
And we were heartbroken when we found you were on the other side of the country because we're like, she in person would make it just an amazing pod. But
I'm starting to do Shabari tours. So my first one's going to be in Austin, and then I want to do LA and New York City. So
yeah, please.
When you come to LA, yes.
Let us know. Like an hour away. We're not even far. I wanted to do my stat of the day. So, Jacqueline, on the podcast, we do a stat of the day where I give you a stat that I found interesting in doing my research for this episode. And I make all of you guess. And the audience has to guess. And then I give the answer at the very end of the episode. It teases the listener. It makes them stay around for a while. So right now, it is time for my stat of the day. In 1971, there was a study done on how many individuals engaged in BDSM as part of their regular sexual intercourse. This is vanilla normal America. 8% of men and 5% of women admitted to engaging in BDSM play at some point in their sexual lifetime in 1971. In 2015, an updated study was done. What percentage of adults admitted to having BDSM practice in their sexual play?
Ooh.
What year was
Do we get multiple choice or we just
get multiple choice? One guess.
We're going to have to just shoot from the hip.
Everyone shoots from the hip. So let me read it again. In 1971, a Miami study showed that 8% of, you see that I did the Miami study? You like that? 8% of men and 5% of women admitted to BDSM play in their sexual lifetime at some point. In 2015, another study done in all of America, the whole of the country, showed that overall, what percent of adults admitted to BDSM play?
You want to go first?
No, you go.
I'm just gonna shoot for 31%. I think that's way too high, but don't let my guess sway you.
I was going to say at least 51.
Okay.
Ooh,
put it down.
I like that. I'm hopeful. 51 would be. I would be impressed with an income.
You have to take it.
I'm going to go for a 65. I'm feeling 65%.
Ooh. I like how hopeful and enthusiastic we are about this. Is great.
Wait, do they say how they define BDSM?
I was going to ask, but I was like,
they defined BDSM as BDSM is defined. Okay. So they used the terms bondage. They gave examples of bondage, discipline. They gave examples of discipline, sadomasochism, and they gave it examples of both. Okay. So, we'll get to that stat in just a moment. So, in another study that was done in 2019, they actually interviewed the kink community. So they went on a bunch of different kink message boards and they interviewed individuals who are involved in the lifestyle. And I had a very difficult time finding statistics on bondage, specifically on rope tying and on Shibari. So I had to widen my scope for the stat of the day because I really wanted a super specific Shibari stat. But unfortunately, there's not a lot. And it's a lot of people who are giving anecdotal evidence of enjoying Shibari and enjoying bondage, and not a lot of actual solid data, which we prefer here on What's Your Position. So I had to go a bit bigger, but I did find a study that was done in 2019 that went to the kink community, and they show that in the kink community, 10% of the kink community prefers bondage play over any other play, which I thought was super interesting. Yeah. But I feel like that's a snapshot of time, right? So I feel like individuals who are involved in the kink community can switch their kinks from time to time. Like you might be really into dominance, master-slave scenarios. You might be really into impact play for a while. You might be into bondage for a while. So I feel like we're just seeing a snapshot with that statistic. But what have you noticed in the community of kink? Because that is the community that I feel like you belong to. And how do you know that like what you're doing? How are the other kink community members receiving you, and how has your experience been in that community?
It has been beautiful. I wouldn't say I wouldn't consider myself like a kinkster, but I do go to like a lot of kink events, and I do have a lot of friends that are like deep into the lifestyle. But whenever I am in that community, I have a lot of friends that are like pro doms or, in various different ways. I feel very respected. I feel like, they really appreciate my work and the ways in which I kind of fuse the more healing component to the softer components into some of the things that are a little bit more shadowy. And I'm saying shadowy in a really positive and empowering way. Yeah. But yeah, they have been some of the most phenomenal human beings and very fascinating when it comes to their kinks. And one of the things that I've really fallen in love with, I think in the beginning when I first, especially when I started doing like solo kink, that's really how I introduced myself into the mix. I was really into like impact plague and, bondage and candle walks. I need more things that were more on sensation. And it wasn't until I started interweaving myself more into the community, and I have a partner who's very, very, very sexually open and experimental, that I started to realize that it's more of the psychology behind the dynamics, behind that's what's happening, that at least turns me on, and what I'm feeling turns most people on. And I have some friends that will have like some amazingly interesting and intricate scenes, is what they call them, that evoke a lot of emotion. And I think at the end of the day, like that's what people are really striving for when it comes to deep connection, or really going into not only subspace but top space, which is the more dominant version of getting into that flow state, is the connection that happens, even if the emotion that you're wanting to evoke is humiliation or is fear or is loss of control. Like to be able to be in such a vulnerable relationship with another human being, and to be that honest with yourself, and kind of like what we were talking about in the beginning, is like complete acceptance of the full spectrum of emotions. And what would happen if like you went into your jealousy, or you went into your humiliation, or you went into your shame, but intentionally and to eroticize it, to find pleasure in it, and to be witnessed by another human being while you're in the depths of that emotion. It's just a completely different level of eroticism and a vulnerability and personal empowerment that just blows my mind when it comes to the kink community.
So you literally just segued us into our first break. Our break. We're taking a break. And when we come back, we are going to get down and dirty with the psychology of bondage, and really the psychology of how this can help individuals deal with internalized traumas, internalized issues, what psychological benefits Shibari and bondage provide, as well as what psychological benefits BDSM provides as well. We're also going to talk a little bit more about some types of Shibari that Jacqueline does, and what happens at a session. I really want to kind of hear the process of what you do for people. And I really want to talk about sexuality and Shibari, and how you express yourself during a session. We will be right back. Join us. Is your bedroom getting boring? Does your sex life feel stale? Or are you just looking for a fun date night activity? Aria has got you covered. Aria's carefully cultivated Choose Your Own Adventure box is like no subscription service you have ever encountered. You and your partner fill out a sexy questionnaire to help the intimacy experts tailor your boxes to your comfortability, range of sexual likes and dislikes, and create specialized scenes for both of you to enjoy. Each box is hand-curated with high-quality items to enhance your sexy scene, and includes Spotify playlists, provides ideas for starting the scene, and encourages you to have boundaries, safe words, and aftercare. And throughout the process, your personal concierge will text you, email you, and get you excited for your sexy night in. Whether you're looking to increase your kink or just become closer to your partner, Aria has a scene for you. Visit aria.fyi.com and use our code WYP15 at checkout for 15% off your first 3 months and try on a new side of your sensual self. That's WYP15. Aria, your playful mentor for all things sexy.
For you, only move like once. Life move fast when you do what you want. I guess I'm doing what I want. Hope you're doing what you want.
Welcome back, fellow humans, to our full frontal with Jaqueline Michelle. We are talking about sensuality, Shibari, stripping, sexiness. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Just all of the things. We're coming back with Mia had a thought.
I did have a thought.
Mia's thought.
We're going to make a jingle.
Yeah, we are.
Mia sometimes has thoughts on breaks because the guest has said something and she immediately, like a bunny, hops onto her laptop and
I'm like, I definitely wrote a paper about this.
I found an article about this and I'm like, Jesus fuck.
What a G. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So tell us your thought.
Yeah. So when we started talking about subspace, and I feel like subspace, and you said top space also, I've never heard of that. That's so awesome.
The flow state.
Yeah.
Right?
Flow state in general. That's like what the general feeling is such a huge through line in kink and BDSM.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to that space is kind of where you're like you said, really feeling the psychology behind like the practice of it and really getting to kind of like experience that mindfulness in yourself. Like at the subspace, to the paper that I wrote a few years ago for school, as defined by this one researcher in an article we can link. I think it's a super cool article if you want. Says that the subspace can be described as a feeling similar to flying, floating, deep relaxation, and even an out-of-body experience that can temporarily induce positive feelings of depersonalization, derealization, and a decrease in physical and emotional stress. It's just kind of like some have described it as a recalibration period almost, where there's no distinction between like pain and pleasure. And sometimes pain isn't even required for people to enter this state. You can get into a flow state. Have you heard of runner's high? That's a flow state.
Yeah.
Where you're just like really completely and entirely in the moment.
And time is kind of a non-concept and space is. And Jacqueline, do you agree with all of this?
Yeah, 110. And I like that you added the runner's high component, because I don't think that entering subspace or top space is it's not just something that can happen in a scene. It's really just really deep presence. It can happen in a yoga practice. It can happen when you're running. It can happen if you're washing the dishes. There's been times where I'm like really enjoying the soap and the water, and it's just, like, wow, this
just
is
really there. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of artists, actually, a lot of painters and a lot of, my sister is an artist, Cecily. Shout out to Star Stuff Galleries, by the way, official sponsor. She's an artist of many mediums, and she talks about flow space and getting into this. And sometimes she'll call me during it, and it almost sounds like not manic, but like really just I'm here and I really want to share this with somebody. Like I've reached this place and look at what I've created and I'm going to do this and this. Artists are very much into their flow space. So it is not necessarily a kink or BDSM and specific, but also, it does show up there.
Yeah.
A lot.
Also,
and
this
go ahead.
Go for it. I want to speak on something really quickly, just because how you were saying, one of the things that I really love about what I discovered once I started getting into kink was like the amount of spirituality that happens through these experiences. Because from the outside, you don't think that. You think like dungeons and masochism and sadism and like, you know, these really, you know, shadowy, unconscious things. At least that's how I was perceiving it before I got into it. And the amount of like actual presence. One of the things that I thought was really fascinating was there would be Buddhist monks that would go and flagellate themselves. They would whip themselves and go into transcendental meditations through that pain. And that to me was just so fascinating. And we can relate it to the monks that, you know, have set themselves on fire and they sit there.
Right.
And it's like, how do we actually, you know, get into that type of mental space within ourselves? Because I'm sure they're not disassociating. They just must be so detached from suffering that I'm assuming. I have never been anywhere close to feeling like I could ever do that, but
so crazy. No, this article specifically calls out how this experience can also be felt by women who are experiencing childbirth, like doing a natural delivery. Some women are trying to focus specifically on the delivery rather than the pain that they're experiencing. And without the aid of other medications, just like a natural birth, whatever, no epidural, you can experience these same kind of changes in attention, feelings of calmness, feeling peaceful, the floating sensation, really just feeling present and in the moment, not necessarily like attached to anything, if that makes sense. It's so crazy.
I love that phrase though, being present for the labor and delivery, not being present for the pain, like being in the moment of like, I'm giving birth to a human right now and I'm going to be there and not involved in like the next contraction or whatnot. Have you ever done a session with a pregnant person or with someone who is postpartum?
No, I haven't. Not yet. I have not had the honors.
Interesting. I just wonder,
that would be so
I just wonder what would come up for them and like how they how that would feel for them. Anyways, I think that's fascinating. So that is one of the psychological benefits of BDSM, kink and bondage, is that flow state. So achieving that state actually is one of the main reasons that people engage in BDSM activities. And it is also associated with more focused attention and loss of self-consciousness and optimal performance of tasks after the scene is over. So people feeling like they can go and accomplish more things in life.
Recentered, getting rebooted.
Rebooted, right? It's an incredible benefit psychologically. There's also psychological theories and ideas from recent studies that have shown individuals who engage in BDSM have better communication skills in their relationships. They have better sex. They have higher pleasure during sex. They also have better relationships outside of the bedroom because so much communication is happening in these scenes and in the BDSM community that it actually translates outside of the bedroom, and their communication skills and setting boundaries and reaching flow state in other states of life are actually falling over in a beneficial way for individuals psychologically into their personal lives. Have you seen this in your students or within yourself?
I've definitely seen it within myself. And it wasn't just in the kink, but in the kink community that I entered. But I think just anything that moves beyond ethical, non-vanilla sex or intimacy. Ever since I got into E&M or like non-monogamous relationships, or ever since I got into kink, or ever since I got into like the swinger scene and started going to sex parties, I started to realize how much actual intimacy, communication, understanding of people that actually happens that I was not getting anywhere near when I was just having, you know, more vanilla or more casual sex. And it's so interesting because again, like there's like this big perception of like, oh, you must, when you go to a sex party, everybody must be fucking everybody. And when you go to a kink thing, it must be like this. And it's like, no, whenever you're actually there, I've met some of the friendliest and most like genuinely caring people of like, oh, hey, can I touch you here? Or what is your pain level? Or they'll even check in with, you know, I'll go with my partner and they'll be like, oh, like we'll check in with everybody's partner to make sure like, oh, what are your boundaries? What are your desires? What are your agreements? So I agree 110% with the amount of intimacy, communication, the better sex life, and the better quality of relationships from just tapping into your sexuality in that type of way. And then when it comes to the women that I've tied, the amount of revelations that they have, and it's so interesting because they'll usually say they have the revelations when the rope comes off. Like whenever they're actually, you know, like being held and we're going through like the very sensory experience. One of the things, you know, we're talking a lot about the psychological effects of rope. And I feel like I can't attest to that as much as the somatic responses that happen when we're in rope. I'm really big on just getting out of the mind and into the body. And I really feel like once we're in the body, that's when that prefrontal cortex shuts off. We're in that flow state. And that's when our, you know, in a more spiritual sense, the downloads come in, or the realizations, or we have the opportunity to get out of our own way. And then not only that, our muscles store our memories, our belief systems, our traumas. And oftentimes we're running or moving through our body in a very unconscious way, not tuning into those subtleties of where is their constriction? Where is their numbness? Where is their juiciness? And one of the things that I love is, you know, people, mainly, you know, claustrophobic people or people that don't really understand kink or bondage, they think like, oh my God, I can never do that. That's constraining. I would go crazy. But in reality, I love to think of rope or being bound. It's like, it gifts you the present moment. You cannot escape when you are tied up. You can't reach for your phone. You can't go to the fridge. You can't phone a friend. You have to be there with your emotions, with what's coming up, with the sensations. And there's been a wide spectrum of experiences that happen. When I think of the word eroticism, I don't necessarily equate it to sex. I equate it to just raw energy circulating through the body. And that is the most raw erotic thing that we can do. And I've had sessions with both men and women. And I would love to talk about the difference between tying a man and a woman as a female.
Yeah. I would love for you to too. Let's fucking go. What?
Yeah.
So Jacqueline, let me ask you a question real quick, if you don't mind. I just thought of something that I'd love to have the answer
Original
to.
thought.
Really original thought. Like, this is great. Good on me.
Good job.
Applause.
Good job, Ash.
Thank you. What's the difference between tying a man up versus tying a woman? Can you elaborate on that, maybe?
110. So I would define it. This is obviously going to be in my particular experience and the ways that I orchestrate my sessions, because I'm a little less on the dommy side and more so of like just the more sensual, soft, let me nurture you side, which is another form of dominance.
I get it, but I get it from you, from your page, just coming at me from Instagram, which is, I wish there was another way. Like, I feel dominated and also very cared for just from watching what you're doing. So you are oozing dominance and empathy, as well as compassion and sexuality constantly. Like,
let's put a pin in that, because I want to talk about my dominance journey as a hyper feminine people pleaser doormat type of cat, because that's been a whole journey.
There's a lot of pins in this episode.
There's a lot of pins.
Tell me about tying up a man versus a woman.
So I've only tied like maybe a handful of men. The majority of the women the people that I tie are women. Now, with the female sessions that I have, there's no prediction of what's going to come up. I've had some where the woman is bawling her eyes out the entire time, and she's had very like deep set, like psychic kind of revelations of being in the womb or being held, or, you know, not past, but like being in a child and back in her like child regression type things. Mm-hmm. I've had other ones where, you know, I had a girlfriend of mine, my best friend of 20 something years. I had the pleasure of tying her, and she said that she felt every single woman in the world, and she was crying, and she was kind of releasing all this heart armor. She's the sweetest person, but a lot of heart weight. And she could just feel this like feminine holding. And then I've had other sessions where I have the woman tied up and she starts touching her vulva and she's masturbating in front of me. And I'm just holding her in the bondage and caressing her while she's tapping into her own femininity. So it's a whole spectrum of like deep heartache being released to orgasms being achieved to just kind of playfulness and the artistic kind of one. So the tying women has been, you know, all over the place, as feminine energy is. Yeah. Now, when it comes to tying a man, I'm just going to set the scene. I'm 5'1". I'm very petite. And the men that I've tied are in the 6 foot range. The men that I have tied have been entrepreneurs. They are the provider, the protector, the like, you know, very stoic man in the family that have always had to go, 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 go. And I remember I get this nervousness every single time I tie a man, because I'm like, they're 3 times my size. I do a lot of floor work. So, you know, I get in my head in the sense of how am I going to hold and manipulate them and all these things. Once the session starts, I place my hand on their heart and the men are bawling. Like it's an immediate cracked open, and it's significantly less movement. I'll maybe put them in 2 or 3 ties and just hold them and caress them for a good hour. And the entire time they're going through these deep, I think, you know, oftentimes we talk about, you know, female suppression and the ways in which the patriarch has kind of like suppressed femininity, but men have also gotten a really big, ugly side of that coin as well. Right. And they're not allowed to show their emotions. They're not allowed to cry or to show vulnerability and to be able to hold vulnerable, 110. Yeah. And so it's been such an honor.
We talk about this all the time on this podcast. We talk about, I am a staunch believer in like smash the patriarchy, not just for women, but for fucking men. Like stop this fucking brutality on the mental health and well-being of our men. Like that is, you're fucking creating generations of people who hate themselves and who hate the women that they married, and they are just angry motherfuckers, and all they want to do is be held, and everyone fucking deserves that. Shit. You need to go on tour. I need you to hold.
Yeah, no, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening.
I'm serious. Why don't you do more men? Like, what is keeping you from just like help them, Jacqueline?
110. No, I feel you. Women are just my calling. Like that's where I feel like I have the deepest like reverence for. And then I think
the men are the ones that are not coming to her, right?
I don't know.
For this, right?
Well,
I don't think men
they're not coming, but I'm also not marketing myself as that, you know what I mean? So the men that I have tied, they've been clients of my partner actually. And like I said, he does sexual freedom coaching. And so they're like, oh, I see Jacqueline's work. I would love to also receive this. I will say I'm very, very, and this is just my own thing, I'm very conscientious of interacting with men just because I know how I market myself online. I understand I'm a beautiful, young, attractive woman that's half naked, dancing erotically. And so luckily, I don't know how it happens, I get 0 disrespectful men in my DMs. I'm really, really, really grateful for that. I know it. My partner, he's like, there's not a single dude that says anything. I'm like, no man says anything vulgar to me.
That's great. And that's amazing. But isn't that shitty that that's the actual standard like most women find?
It is.
Like that's the standard where if you're a female doing anything sexual on a social media space.
God, I had to block someone the other day who asked me if it was okay that he was still a virgin at 21. And my professor ass was like, the average loss of, and I'm like throwing statistics at him like he gives 2 fucks. And he's like, do you think it's my penis size? And I was like, I'm not feeding. I'm not
feeding into this. Oh my goodness. I know
I'm good. Like, thanks though.
No, the humiliation kink just creeping out. Like,
and that's fine. Right. It's not what I'm in the market for. I love to,
absolutely. That's what I love about kink is like you can still get it in without crossing somebody else's boundaries.
Absolutely. Okay, so really quickly, I wanted to talk about how another psychological benefit of BDSM, kink, and bondage is that, and you just fucking said it in a beautiful little egg, they've actually related it to meditation and the fact that when monks meditate, they get into some of the same headspace that individuals who practice BDSM. And it's actually a mindful practice that you can do that is similar to yoga, where you are experiencing your body and you are experiencing the sensations that you're having. Couple of other benefits psychologically for BDSM and kink are enhancing pleasure throughout your sexual life. So not only bringing you to this new subspace that you have learned how to get to, but also increasing pleasure throughout your day, building deeper connections with couples, healing relationships. So A 2019 review stated that BDSM can offer a safe space for people healing from trauma, PTSD, and abuse, and therapists might use practices such as bondage as a tool to help couples work on power dynamics.
I think that would be such a fucking fantastic idea for a therapist to have someone like you, Jacqueline, on like as someone that they can refer patients to.
Yeah.
For like,
yes,
therapy is fantastic, but sometimes you just really need that physical aspect of it to really unlock the emotion behind it.
Especially because like usually like couples therapists don't have a specialty. They're just sort of an overarching person. And so to really get behind power dynamics or to get behind someone's trauma or abuse, it would be amazing to, recommend people like Jacqueline who are able to navigate that aspect with them so they can go back to therapy
and talk about it.
There you go. They also
that's
say
something that I go for it. No, I want to touch on something really quickly because that's what I originally wanted to get into was, psychology. I was in it for many, many, many years. And it wasn't until I started getting into body-based practices that like things actually started to shift in the sense of like actual safety. I love therapy. I think it's super vital, but I also feel like what it does is that it just helps us organize and understand our trauma and not actually tap into a deeper sense of embodiment of intimacy and safety and connection and pleasure that actual body-based practices. It's like, I feel like therapy is the theory and then the body-based work is like the practical. It's like, okay, now let's actually put this into practice. And so I think they interweave each other really, really powerfully.
I think that it's important to recognize that you go to a therapist and 9 times out of 10, they're going to hand you a pill. There's no pill for fixing a marriage. You need to go to therapy and then you actually need to do work at home. And it's hard to do that work without the aid of something like someone who has some sort of expertise and can say, maybe try this later, or maybe you need to try this on your own, or have you ever had an orgasm by yourself, or have you ever asked her if she wanted to have sex, or do you just assume that she does? Like, I think that the practice is the medicine, Jacqueline. I think that when you talk about couples therapy, knowing how to actually practically do things sexually with one another is the Paxil of a marriage,
Yeah. Man. And another thing too, when it comes to body-based practices is like, the more that you get into the body, the more that you get to feel into what your actual yeses and nos are. Where am I actually going to expand into a situation, or where am I actually going to contract? And I feel like when a lot of people don't have a relationship that's intimate with their own body, then that's where either shutdown happens or a lot of people pleasing or dormancy happens. It's like, you don't really know and can't really hold space for your own body autonomy because you yourself don't know how to tune into that.
Yeah. And when people don't say what they want, or when they go along with things that they don't necessarily want because of people pleasing, or because they think that their body is to be used by someone else for their pleasure and not their own pleasure, that's where resentment builds. And a lot of resentment is hidden in this, like, well, I just feel like I'm like, all you want to do is make babies, or all you just care about your orgasm and your blowjob, or you just care about getting off and not me. Like, there's a lot of resentment when it comes to people pleasing. So recognizing that you might be the people pleaser, recognizing that you may not be actively participating in your own like pleasure war, you need to stand up for yourself and say, I want this, I don't want this, I like this, I don't like this, I want to try this, I don't want to try that. And it's hard to do those things. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say yes and no. It's scary. It's really vulnerable to be in a room with someone and say no. Like, that's a really vulnerable place to be. How, dear Jacqueline, does your sexuality play a role in your practice? So I can't tell you respectfully how hot your videos are. Like, they make me hot. I want to strip and tie myself up. And I don't understand what do you do with all of the sexuality that is oozing out of your body as you are tying up these human beings? What the fuck happens to it?
That's such an interesting question, because how I relate to, I'm going to separate sexuality and sexual energy, because those to me are slightly different things. Okay. So when I think of like my sexuality, I think of the way in which you're kind of describing it, that ooziness, that juiciness, like a wet pussy that's actually like turned on. And that doesn't happen often in my sessions. It happens when the other woman is turned on and she's masturbating. In those sessions, I'm like, oh my God, girl, I'm wet. But when I think about my sexual energy, my sexual energy is so present, and that is happening in so many different ways. And I can feel my sexual energy on, even if I'm going through like a week of not being horny, or I don't really have a lot of libido. And that was, so when I feel my sexual energy circulating through these things, I mean, it really is, the energetic turn on comes from the presence that comes from dominance, the presence from like being able to hold and guide and move and influence energy in that way. One of the things that I really love about like dominance is that it really, and it took me so long to like really integrate this, but it really isn't about your ability to control or to demand. It's about your ability to be able to influence the energy within a dynamic. So I'm not just saying like, yo, go do this. Like that's a command. What I want to do is to move the energy within the room in my own way to where you want to do that for me. You want to do that for yourself. And that completely shifts the difference between what I would call an unconscious dom, or maybe an unseasoned dom. Not that and a more skilled dom, not saying that I'm the most skilled of doms out there by any means, but
do you consider yourself a dominatrix?
Not. I would love to consider myself and go deeper into that in various ways. I do not yet consider myself a dominatrix. No.
And why don't you? Like, what is the distinction there for you? What do you think you'd have to do?
I'm still tapping into the masculine energy within myself. I'm still tapping into feeling really solid. And this is just like me kind of being vulnerable of my own personal behind the scenes. But like tapping into my own leadership, tapping into like my own more in-depth seduction, or my more of like my ability to influence in a way that isn't just soft femininity. I would love to play more with my dark femininity or my masculinity. And I feel like it'll get there. But I'm still working through my own things when it comes to that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. How do you channel all of your energy after a session? Do you have a way of either ridding yourself of that sexual energy, like a cleansing ceremony or aftercare that you do for yourself?
No, I don't ever feel like I take on the person's energy. If anything, I feel more energized. And then it'll always be different. Like sometimes I'll have something to do that I need to go get done after the session. So I'll go and carry on with the rest of my day. Sometimes I'll go into my own practice. Sometimes I'll sit and watch TV. So I don't necessarily have like, oh, after a session, I'm going to do this. I just allow it to kind of flow into whatever I'm feeling in that moment and what I had planned for the rest of the day. But I don't ever feel weight, or I don't ever feel like I need to do any cord cutting between me and the people that I've worked with.
So let's talk a little bit about your Shabari like solo play, because to me that is like mind boggling. Like I can't, your local human can't just walk down the street and go to a bondage night and ask someone to tie him up. Like that's not fucking happening in middle America. That's not happening in California. Like I have to book it like months in advance to have someone tie me up here. Actually, no, but if you know someone who wants to just tie me up, call me. It's fine. I feel like that this idea of solo sensuality, this idea of self-pleasure that's not necessarily masturbation, or this idea of solo Shibari is probably very foreign and very like scary to a lot of people. So can you break down how someone can begin this journey into tapping into this sensual side of themselves by using Shibari on their own?
110. So one of the things that I always say is like, it has nothing to do with the ropes and more about your ability to be intimate with yourself. And so whenever I do teach another person, I have a course and I teach workshops on how to begin solo bondage. And what I always start with is teaching people how to just be with your body. Can you actually begin to feel like tuning into your five senses. Can you tune in and be present with what it is that you're seeing, tasting, feeling, touching, and trying to practice it not from a narrative space of like, oh, okay, I see a lamp and I see a plant, but doing it without narrative so that you can fully trust your eye's ability to gift you information. And can you absorb and trust your body's ability to be able to do that? And not only that, when we think about sensuality or being in the body or becoming ritualistic with our relationship with ourselves, we've kind of been conditioned that we can only do it when everything is beautiful. I can only connect to myself when there's a lit candle and I have a bubble bath going. But can you connect with yourself when you're stuck in traffic? Can you connect with yourself in the middle of an argument? Can you connect with yourself when you feel really bloated and you just ate like a lot of cake because you're suppressing an emotion? Like, that's to me what I think about sensuality. And I teach it from the inside out and from the outside in. And that's the outside in, tuning into it even when it's not quote unquote ideal or beautiful. And then the second layer to that is tuning into your sensuality from the inside out. And I break it down into three ways. What it is that you're feeling beneath the skin, the emotions, and then the thoughts that are being connected that are influencing those emotions. And once you can actually tune into where there's constriction, where there's numbness, where there's dissociation, where there's pleasure, and where the emotions are actually going into the body, I strongly feel like once you have those tools, when it's time to interweave yourself into the ropes, and take yourself through that somatic experience, you now have the tools to actually process and be present with what's actually coming up. One of the things that I always say is like, if you want to learn how to tie a knot, go on YouTube. It's a lot simpler than what a lot of people think. But if you want to learn how to actually feel and connect to yourself, then come to me, because I'm going to show you that it's not about the rope at all. It's not about the tie. It's not about the flogging. It's about your ability to actually be present with what's coming up and through you. And that's one of the things that I loved about, Tantra. Tantra is very big on the emotions that you're feeling are sacred. Every part of your body is sacred. You as a human being are sacred, and beginning to interweave that with all of the dimensions that come with being human and that show up in a self-pleasure practice. So when you're in the rope, it can be very artistic, and you can begin to accentuate your body and your hips and your breasts, and you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, wow, I'm a fucking woman. This feels amazing. And also, we need a whole space for the parts of ourselves or for some other women's reality where they accentuate their bodies and they're like, the shame comes in, the judgment comes in. Maybe there was something that happened to that part of the body, and it doesn't necessarily need to be sexual trauma, but it can be trauma that was stored there from an ugly car accident, or from maybe like being bullied in high school. And now that you're focusing on your breast, or you're focusing on your ass, or you're focusing on your arms, I always say that it's not the part of your body that you don't like. It's the emotion that is stored in that part of the body that is making you think these things about yourself. And it's so when you're in the
was in that moment, it's not your C-section scar, it's that trauma that you had to have a C-section, or it's not the scar on your leg, it's the car accident and the emotions that come with the PTSD from that. Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful way to put it.
110. And that's going to come up when you're in the rope. So I'm in, and another thing as well is the ability, oftentimes we're like always kind of reaching. One of the things that I love to teach women, I do this a lot in my coaching, is how to self-pleasure, like how to be with your body, how to sit with yourself. And what a lot of women do, especially in the beginning, is once it gets uncomfortable, or once they think, oh, I'm doing this wrong, they go and they leave. Oh, you know what? I need to do the dishes, or I need to reach for my phone. And like I said, in the rope, it's not that you can't untie yourself quickly, but it's almost like, okay, no, I'm here. And can you be, a lot of people talk about discipline, like being disciplined for your self-pleasure practice, but it's not about showing up every single day. It's about being devoted to you showing up. Can you do it because you realize connecting to yourself is an honor? Can you do it because you realize
discipline and devotion are two different things. I think, like, being disciplined at something, I feel like I have to do this well, because if not, there's some sort of punishment, or there's a reward because I'm doing it well, or there's, it's tied to gains of some sort. Whereas devotion to me feels more altruistic and less about what am I going to get from this. It doesn't matter what I get from this. I'm just here because I want to be here.
Yeah, it's like a prayer. Like my mind goes to prayer. Can you go into the body as a form of worship? And so, that's another thing that I really love about it. And then we can even think about it in the sense of like a weighted blanket. Like weighted blankets became so popular because, we need hugs. They're amazing. I have my partner, I don't have a weighted blanket, but oftentimes I'll have my partner just like lay on top of me. I'm like, I just want all your weight on top of me right now. And it's like the human body like loves touch. We love that sensation, and to be able to provide that for yourself is really powerful. So there's so many different, I forgot your question, but there's so many different dimensions.
You answered my question 1,000%. So do you and your partner incorporate Shibari into your sex life?
We don't. We've maybe played with it.
I was not.
I know, everybody's always so surprised.
Yeah, that's a sad trombone.
No, I mean we've played with it like maybe 2 or 3 times. We have like a bunch of other things that we explore together, and it really isn't like erotic to me. Like I love kind of being free and being able to like grab and move and play and all these things. I'm not opposed to it. But there was my partner's one of those people where he can like just do anything once and just be amazing at it without having like any skill at it. And I've been practicing for like 3 years now. And so one time we like planned this like little Shabari date, and I kind of taught him some like simple things. And I was like, okay, now you're going to like attack me and you're going to tie me up. And he was just so good at creating all these ties off the jump. I was like, how on earth are you doing this?
One thing. I just taught you.
I was mad, but also like very turned on. I was like, okay, this is something.
I taught husband Kevin Weller how to drive a stick shift. No joke. Thank you very much.
That's a euphemism, by the way.
And it was not hard. That's also a euphemism. It wasn't actually. I thought I was a good teacher, and then now he drives us everywhere we go. So. When we go to other countries,
a win-win situation for you. It's like now you're passing through princess.
Legitimately, like I just get drinks wherever we go, and this man drives me everywhere. And when we go to other countries, it's all stick shifts, and he just drives through the Italian hills while I'm sipping limoncello. Ladies, I'm living my best. Please. It's phenomenal. So I understand teaching a man something and then being like, hey, well, actually though, I'm kombucha girl. Like I was upset at first, and now I'm really not.
That's where my mind is like, well.
So what kind of kinks, if you don't mind answering, what kind of kinks and exciting things do you enjoy in the bedroom with your partner? How about you?
So how much do I crack open right now?
Like where do we go with this?
Where do we start?
So I'm very into like, I feel like I'm very into like the daddy dom baby girl dynamic. Like I love that sense of like safety and like being very like cared for and tended, and like it's just like a very loving, like erotic thing for me. I also love I would say like that's probably the biggest one, different forms of like DS dynamics. So going back into like how kink to me has become very psychological. I'm not like a bratty sub. I'm more of like a very like good girl sub. I love to like be praised. I love to be like told very nice things. So like I love that sense of like safety when it comes to a DS dynamic. It's the safety, the nurturing, the love, the care that just makes me like ooze from my heart down to my pussy. So I would say like that's a major one.
And then when it places to ooze from, by the way, if you're going to ooze from two places, those are the two.
And then, I would say that's like we interact with like a lot of group play. And then I would say I love impact play. Like I love candle wax. I love the pinwheels. I love the feathers. But again, it's not, it turns me on, but it's not in like my pussy's throbbing type of thing. It's more of like, I love just playing and being sensual and having that like other form of like sensual connection with my partner or with myself. I'm not as kinky as a lot of people think I am. I'm very like, very chill with it.
So what is your favorite thing about this relationship that you're in right now? How has this relationship made you a better lover, a better person, graduated you to a different plane of relationship existence?
There's no way that it hasn't. Like this has been literally a relationship that I've prayed for. He has transformed my life in so many different ways, not only sexually, but the way that he operates through life, he's very much of like a go-getter. He's very much so in the sense of like, I believe in myself. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take initiative in making it happen. And just having somebody in my life in such close proximity that operates in that way and that doesn't really let me not operate in that way has completely expanded the way that I show up up in the world, the way that I've showed up in my business, the way in which I'm like starting to really believe in myself in deeper and deeper ways. And then he's also like he's challenged me in so many of my blockages or in so many of my weak spots in some of the most powerful ways. Like I still am, but was so much more of like a homebody, or was very, like closed off when it came to social interactions. And for the longest time I was like, oh, I'm just a homebody, or I'm just an introvert. But the more that I started to go into like actual events, into other experiences, I started to realize like, oh, I was using an introvert to hide the fact that I don't feel like I belong. Like I don't feel like I'm allowed to be here. And so there were so many ways in which like
take up space. You don't want to take up space.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the more, just kind of like he's taught me how to live life in a nutshell. He's taught me how to wake up every single day and just be like, we're going to make the most out of everything. We're going to have the most fun. We're going to have the wildest experiences. And it's so interesting to see. One of the things that I talk about in sensuality is like, a lot of people feel like they resist feeling the shame, or they resist feeling, the sorrow, the jealousy. I started to realize like, oh, I have resistance towards feeling happiness. I have resistance towards like feeling excitement, and I felt like being able to like go out in life and do things that was really me walking into the unknown. I learned so much about myself as an individual and how much life was actually available to me. And then when it comes to like, just the actual intimacy within our relationship, being able to be this radically vulnerable with another human being has just really transformed the ways that I think about love, the ways in which I think about friendship, the ways in which we've learned how to communicate with one another, and the ways in which we've kind of learned how to like, interweave our strengths with one another has been really powerful. And then even sexually, he's with immediacy. He was very direct with like, hey, what do you like? What are some of your kinks? And I was like, I had kinks that I was like, I was going to take to the grave. I was like, this is just going to be like things I explored. Nobody's ever going to know this. And it was like within the first month of our relationship, he was like, hey, so like, I'm into like this thing. And it was the specific thing that I was going to take to my grave.
You have dropped 1,075 hot drops on this episode, from stripping to consensual non-monogamy to swinging to sex clubs. You literally aren't going to tell me the fucking kink that you were going to take to the grave?
No, that one's for us. But it was more than anything. It was just like the liberation. Like he's just transformed
to say this thing that you literally thought, I'm never telling another fucking soul. They will judge, they will hate, they will whatever, shame, guilt, the whatever,
all of the above
me, or anyone's going to judge me. And that is, I remember when husband Kevin Weller asked me what kind of porn I watched. This was not long ago, by the way. This was literally like 2.5 years ago. And I was like,
did you just come right out with it?
No.
You did not.
No, I did not. But I found out that it was not a bad thing. And
yeah. And 16 years of being together. And she was like, oh, I don't know if I want to like admit. And I'm like,
it's not even that bad. I watched the same porn that everyone else watches.
And what we found is we're like
lesbian porn, and that's what everyone else wants.
Right. It's funny. I was like,
maybe CNC or something, but
I just really like lesbian porn. And I was like, I don't know if I should tell him this. Is he going to get jealous? Like, what's going to happen?
Absolutely not.
And I was like, I just really don't like the harsh, awful gagging on cock, and that is just disgusting to me. Like,
have you ever watched Erica Lust porn?
No.
Do you know who she is?
Write that down.
I do not.
You're gonna want her on the show if you can get her. So Erica Lust is a Spaniard female porn director, And she has revolutionized the porn industry because she's really big on, number one, making it real. Number two, whenever she does like interracial porn, it's not just like a big black man and a petite white woman. It's like actual just normal interracial relationships that actually happen. And then there's like a storyline. It's actual like, and then the porn stars or the porn actors and actresses that they use, they're kind of people like you and me. Like they're just kind of people on their own sexual journey. And they're like, you know what? Like this is my actual authentic sexuality. There's two things that I want to share when it comes to her work. She had one video that completely blew my mind. And I don't know if you're familiar with vulvodynia or vaginismus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a condition where the vagina, vulva, labia, the muscles inside the vaginal canal, one or more or all of those things are not working at their proper function during sex. And a woman either experiences extreme pain to the point that sex isn't even possible, or penetration isn't happening. The vaginal opening is just completely just muscled shut. And individuals who experience a lot of sexual trauma can experience this, but anyone can experience vaginismus.
Yeah.
Wait, can I read what she does just real quick? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So she created a movie, and it was this beautiful female. She's in her barn. She phones her lover to come over for like a little play night, and they're making out. Things are getting hot and heavy, and he goes to put his cock in her, and she goes, "Oh, like we can't have penetrative sex." And he goes, "Well, didn't you call me over to like have sex? Like, you know, how are we going to have sex without penetration?" And she goes, "Let me show you." And the whole movie is them having quote unquote sex in other ways that don't involve penetration, which is just revolutionary for the porn industry.
Right.
And then a second thing that I want to share is one of my best friends, and you guys should have her on the podcast. The woman that I told you, we've been friends for 20 something years. We're actually cousins, but deeper than that, we're like soulmates. She's like my best friend in the whole universe. But she got diagnosed with HIV when we were 21 years old.
Oh my God.
And it was a really revolutionary time for the both of us. It was obviously there was a lot of fear. There's a lot of misunderstanding. She's very open about it, but I'll let you guys bring her on the episode and you guys can talk deeper about it. But you know, whenever she was, you know, kind of like, she became an advocate for HIV awareness and destigmatizing STIs in general very, very, very quickly in the game. And she started, you know, looking like HIV positive porn. And she was just finding that it was like back alley, you know, unsafe prostitution videos that were just not safe to look at, you know? And so she reached out to Erica Lust and she shared with her, "Hey, me and my partner are both HIV positive. I would love to show to the world what HIV positive sex looks like. And it looks like just everybody else's sex." And Erica Lust was like, "This is fucking amazing. If you ever come to Barcelona, like we will make this happen." And so she's just very, very conscious, very intentional in her porn, in her delivery, in her message when it comes to sex in that way. And so circling it back to lesbian porn, I feel like you should watch some of her things because she has a lot of organic, authentic, sexy porn in that way.
I love that. Husband Kevin Weller, please read what Erica Lust does.
Well, yeah, just to fill, this is from Erica Lust's website and the about, but I think it's a good point to kind of highlight this because it says Erica Lust is an award-winning filmmaker creating sex-positive indie adult cinema that portrays sexually intelligent narratives, relatable characters, and realistic hot sex. In an industry that often fails to show a true representation of sex, Erica's focus on female pleasure, cinematic values, diversity, and an ethical production process have helped to change how pornography is consumed.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to recommend that to my students.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
I always like to give my students porn to watch, like not as homework, but like just, hey, we love masturbation.
We know you're watching it.
We know you're watching it.
I want you to be my professor. That sounds amazing.
I throw condoms at people. I give away vibrators for their prizes. We're going to wrap it up. But our last question, and this one might be long. That's what she said. And lastly, how has Sensual Tantra and Shabari changed your life for the better?
In every single way possible. The first thing that comes to mind, it helped me view my sexual trauma as a blessing, because I feel like if I didn't go through sexual trauma, I wouldn't have disassociated and disconnected. And if I didn't disassociate and disconnected, I wouldn't have found these practices. And these practices have helped me have a significantly deeper relationship with my body and really accept every single facet of myself, from not only like the rage and the arousal, but also from like the things that I don't like about myself and the things that I like being able to fully accept. Yeah. The things that I can like fully accept within that. It's helped me make love to life, to have a deeper relationship with God or consciousness or the universe, to actually feel like the divinity that's within me. It's helped me become more passionate, more open-hearted. It's introduced me to this beautiful man that's taking a shower in the other room. It's complete. I mean, every single facet of my life has shifted because of this. And the journey has been gruesome and liberating. And I'm very, 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 very grateful for it.
That's beautiful. That's incredible. And the amount of passion that you have, I can only imagine being someone who is lucky enough to have a session with you and get to experience this awakening of themselves. Do you have any recent stories of any remarkable sessions or breakthroughs that you've had
within the Shabari sessions? Yeah. I feel like all of them have been really like revolutionary. One of my favorite ones that I've ever shared, and I shared it recently on Insta, but I was tying a woman that flew in from Puerto Rico, and, she was really going through this big transition of, tapping into her sexuality and figuring out what was hers and what wasn't, and all of these things. And one of the things that I always have the women do is, just dress in something that's comfortable, but also that's something that makes you feel empowered. Like, okay, if I were to show up as my highest self, like this is what I would have on. And she walks into the room wearing black lace lingerie, and I start the sessions off with an intimate conversation of like what your intention is, your relationship with your body, etc. And I'm a really big believer of, before I place my hands on somebody else's body, I need to make sure that they know how to touch themselves, that they can be with themselves, so that they know that it's really them surrendering to their own body and not them surrendering to me. And so I'm we go into this body work, we go into the mirror work, the ropes, start, and I tie her up, and I have her in a very exposing position for the people that are listening. Her wrists are tied, and I have them up and over her head, and now her wrists are on the back of her neck. So it's a very heart opening, very exposing tie. And she's crying and she's bawling, and that's a normal, reaction that can happen when you're in this experience. And I don't, wipe any tears away. And I have this big giant mirror, and she is crying. And then immediately she opens her eyes, or I have her open her eyes, and the tears, the sobbing turns into laughter, but like deep, like gut wrenching laughter, to the point to where I'm now laughing with her in the middle. I have no idea why we're laughing, but it was just, this like feeding of energy.
And amazing. From there, it was that everyone's laughing. Yeah.
It was really beautiful. And then from there, it turned into more like a more sensual, erotic thing. So one of the things that I love is the multiple emotions that you will have in this experience. And, towards the end, we did the aftercare. We have a beautiful garden. I walk her to the garden. I give her some alone time for journaling. I come back in so that we can, debrief the experience. And I had to ask her, I was like, what was so funny? Like, I have to know. And she was crying. And when I was crying, I kept thinking to myself, like, how ugly I must look in this moment, like how my body looks. And I can't believe I'm crying. And she was just, really talking down to herself as we do sometimes. And she said, the moment I opened my eyes, I saw how fucking beautiful I looked, tied up in lingerie. And she goes, I saw my femininity. I saw my power. I saw my womanhood. And she goes, I bursted into laughter, because how could I not think that? How could I walk through life not seeing my power, my woman, all these things? And that to me was always such a beautiful, revolutionary thing, for so many different reasons, like all the ways in which we kind of create these imaginary, illusionary stories that separate us from our powers, and the opportunity that we once again get to actually just see ourselves in raw, vulnerable, authentic expression. It's like, holy shit, how can we not see how fucking amazing we are?
Okay, so group trip to Miami.
Group trip to Miami.
We come in, so prepare yourself because apparently we're all getting Shibari. I'm going to go back to my stat of the day and reveal what it is. A 2015 study showed what % of adults admitted to using BDSM in the bedroom. Husband Kevin Weller, you are the winner. It is 34%.
Oh, wow.
Can you say what the most common kind?
The most common kind is like a dominant, submissive.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Classic. It's a classic.
And then second is impact play because
I was gonna say, okay, yeah,
is super easy to do.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say choking. I feel like that's been really popular.
It's been popular lately. Here's the crazy thing. So that statistic, 34%, I think is actually a combination of multiple studies done because I saw figures between 6 and 56%. So I don't want to discount Mia or Jacqueline's answers.
So everyone's a winner.
Everybody's a winner today.
When you play with BDSM. As long as you do so consensually and risk awareness. Thank you so much for everything. All right. So let's talk a little bit about where people can find you, Jacqueline.
Yeah, my number one spot is Instagram. I do everything through Instagram. It's Jaquemise, Jaque, M for Mary, ICH. And then from there, you can see all of the content that I have. I talk about sensuality. I talk about self-pleasure, rope bondage, personal empowerment. And then the ways that you can tap into my world, I have 3 main virtual offerings. I'm based in Miami, Florida. So no matter where you are in the world, there's opportunities for you to dive in. My most recent offering is my membership. It's called the Sensually Liberated Membership. It is my main thing for 2024 and my work is to really build more community with all the women that I'm working with so that we don't think we have to do this together or so that we don't have to do this alone, hiding away in our rooms. We can actually create community and we can create sisterhood. So within that membership, I go live in there weekly. We have an amazing book club. We're starting with the book Vagina by Naomi Wolf. If you haven't read it, read it. I also do guided self-pleasure practices in there. And then there's pre-recorded videos for different ways of getting into your body. And like I said, community features. I also have my self-paced course called Boundless. It interweaves sensuality, somatics, and rope bondage. It's all around how to begin to tie yourself. So if you're interested in that and you're feeling super inspired, that's definitely one of my favorite things that I offer. Like I said, and I shared this in the beginning, it's not just about the rope bondage. It's really about having an intimate and sensual relationship with yourself emotionally and physically, and then allowing the ropes to be the cherry on top. I also have one-on-one mentorship, selfhood, and that is like a 3 to 6 month program where we actually go deep into the specifics of what's happening within your subconscious mind, within your body. And I've worked with various different women. Some are sex workers, some are survivors of assault, some are women that are just wanting to reclaim their sexuality. And then, of course, I have my Sensual Shabari, which is my in-person 2-hour immersion where we interweave sensuality, erotic movement, a very tantric DS dynamic, dominant submissive dynamic, and of course the rope bondage to help you surrender not only to me but to yourself.
Absolutely incredible. You're so
cool.
You're a jack of all trades.
Hey, y'all.
We absolutely, I can't believe we've already been talking for this long. Like it literally feels like we just started talking. I'm super sad. We put so many pins in this episode. I feel like I'm going to have to take sewing again.
Do
That's
another
a pin cushion and a half that we did. So you're coming back, Jacqueline. I hope.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you. We love you so much. I am obsessed with your Instagram and obsessed with all of the gorgeousness that you exude. I hope people check out your Instagram, follow you. Speaking of Instagrams, you guys can follow us at What's Your Position Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. My goal for 2024 is to teach more. And in doing that, I promise I'm going to be better at TikTok. Yay.
All right.
Go me. You can also email us at whatsyourpositionpodcast@gmail.com. You can also call us at 513-696-SEX. That is an actual phone number, people. 513-696-SEX. Leave us a message. Tell us what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Tell us about your latest Shabari session. We will play it live on the air because we love you. If you want to suggest a guest or suggest a topic, you know where to find me. Instagram, Gmail, go there. Send me a message. I write everybody back. Jesus Christ.
Yes, she really does.
She really does.
I love it.
I love them all so fucking much. Scott, if you're listening, hey-o. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for being here.
This was great. Thank you.
You're fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do. God, we love you so much. And everybody remember to stay safe, stay kind, and stay sexy.
Something's gotta give. Think we've gotta give up. Though you won't ask me to. Now.
What's Your Position podcast represents the opinions of Ashley Weller and her guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for education and entertainment purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of error. Stay safe, stay kind, and stay sexy.
Darling, you know that we are sold out. This is fading, but the band plays on now. We're crying, so let the velvet roll down.